Welcome students to support tutorial number 5. In this one we're going to take a look at what is elasticity, an important concept that you're being introduced to now in your first year of economics, and perhaps one of the concepts that you will use later on in your working life. Let's take a look. The first thing we want to know and remind ourselves is that the focus here is on learning unit 5. We're going to be looking at elasticity in brief. You obviously will look at it in way more detail in your actual lectures and for the purposes of your test too. We have to understand what elasticity in economics means. Elasticity is not only an economics concept, it is actually a general scientific concept. So now we want to relate it specifically to economics. We need to understand the different types of elasticity. We've got to make sure you can use formula to actually complete your calculations for elasticity. And then we want to make sure that you can understand how to interpret those answers that you get. A brief or generic description of elasticity. It measures the responsiveness or sensitivity of the change in one variable to a change in another. If we wanted to give a specific definition, notice the definition. It says it can be defined as the percentage change in the dependent variable if the relevant independent variable changes by 1%. Now we want to go and start relating that to economics. Well, you have already done this to a degree. You've looked at what will happen to the quantity demanded if the price of the product changes, what will happen to the quantity supplied if the price of the product changes. But now we want to get more specific. Can we actually calculate the impact that a price change is going to have on our quantity demanded or our quantity supplied? That is going to give us useful information when we are analyzing the behavior of our products in a business. So in economics, you have to study, for the purposes of this semester, all these types of elasticity. You'll see there's elasticity of demand, there's elasticity of supply, and then under elasticity of demand, we have price elasticity of demand, we have income elasticity of demand, and we have cross elasticity of demand. Each of these will have their own formula, and you need to understand them in their entirety. A little bit more detail on each of them. Let's take a look. First one, what are we actually looking at? We're looking at the percentage change in the quantity demanded as a result of the percentage change in price. How sensitive is quantity demanded to a change in price? We need to know that. Is it very sensitive or is it very insensitive? Then we look at consumer income. By how much does the quantity demanded or the demand change as a result of a change in the consumer's income? Then we take a look at substitutes or complements, cross elasticity of demand. We're going to look at the percentage change in the quantity of one product as a result of the percentage change in the price of another product or a related product. Then we go on to our last one, and that, of course, is elasticity of supply. And here we are simply looking at the percentage change in the quantity supplied as a result of the change in the price of the product. This, ladies and gents, is a little summary. These are what I call the basic equations or the basic formula that we are using. Each of them will be expanded somewhat. You need to know all the formulas. There's no specific one that you can leave out. We don't know which ones they will test, and they can test any or all of them. Taking you back to what you already know, you've already been introduced to your changes in demand, quantity demanded rather, which are shown by a movement along your demand curve. Now, looking at these two demand curves, you should easily be able to see that their gradients are different. Now, gradients are not the same as elasticity, but gradients will impact on elasticity. When you see a curve with a fairly flat gradient, you're going to understand or get to understand that that will probably show an elastic demand. In other words, when we change that price, that quantity demanded will change by quite a large amount, i.e. it will be more than the change in price. If we go to the steeper curve, we're going to learn that this is inelastic. And that tells us that when the price changes, the change in the quantity demanded will be smaller than the percentage change in price. This is just to illustrate to you that you've already been introduced to this concept, you were just not yet aware of it. Now we're making you aware of it. Your basic formula I've already given to you for price elasticity of demand. That is your percentage change in quantity demanded divided by your percentage change in price. And what we first need to do is check that students are able to calculate their percentage changes. And that is what you'll see on the screen in front of you here. On the next slide, you'll get an opportunity to practice this. So pay attention to the formulae now, and then let's go and have a look. Can you apply it? You have it. So pause now, because obviously I'm going to move on to the next slide, which will show the solutions. And I suggest what you do is go in, see, can you calculate the change in quantity demanded, or rather the percentage change in quantity demanded, the percentage change in price, and then can you calculate the elasticity coefficient as per that basic formula that we've already introduced you to. All right, so pause at this moment. I'm going to move on. Here is your solution. You can see here is your percentage change in quantity demanded. Then we calculate our percentage change in price, and then we put the one over the other in order to calculate our elasticity coefficient. You'll notice that in this case we've got negative 3.6. Now we have to pay attention to how to read that number. You're going to learn that we can ignore that negative, and that's going to be important only for price elasticity of demand. All right. Here we go back to our formulas, your basic formula, which I've already introduced you to, and now what I call the expanded formula. You can see there, they're both calculating exactly the same thing, but they're using the information in different ways. And this is determined basically by the way the information is given to you. If the information is given to you in the form of percentages, then you can simply apply the basic formula. If the information is given to you in terms of P1, P2, Q1, Q2, in other words, you are given a specific change in price and a specific change in quantity, then you can use your delta Q over delta P times P over Q. Remember, your little triangle is delta, and it means a very small change. In each case, we would be looking at the very small change in quantity, the very small change in price, and then your actual original price over your original quantity. Be careful of those originals. Students often forget. We're now going to put these into practice. Go in, use the information that we've just given you to calculate the elasticity coefficient in each of these cases. Once again, I suggest at this point you pause, do the calculation, and then go and test yourself. Whether you've got them correct or not. Remember, at this point, getting it wrong is not a problem. What you need to understand is why you're getting it wrong. If you're struggling, then obviously you take this information to your lecturer and make sure that you understand where you're going wrong, and then fix it. Most important thing. Moving on, ladies and gents. There's your answer for your price elasticity of demand coefficient for your students. Negative 1.6, what does it tell you? Well, at this stage, you don't really know, and it doesn't really matter. We'll let you know in a few slides' time. Tina sells pies. When the price was 10 Rand per pie, she sold 46 per day. She then dropped the price to 8, and now she sells 50 per day. How elastic is the demand for pies? Notice that we're now using delta Q over delta P times P over Q. There's your delta, your change in quantity, which is from 46 to 50. So the quantity demanded of pies went up by 4. What happened to the price? The price went down from 10 to 8, negative 2. Times original price over original quantity, and that gives you your answer, negative 0.43. Once again, I ask, what does this tell you? And once again, you should say to me, I don't know. And for now, that is absolutely fine. We're going to now go and discover, what does this actually mean? Here we go. How to interpret the elasticity coefficient? Well, we need some additional information, ladies and gents, and that's what we're giving you. That these are called categories of price elasticity of demand. These are not types. These are categories, all right? So what does the elasticity coefficient tell us? it tells us that we could fit into one of these 5 categories of price elasticity of demand. Please notice that we've been using it all the time, but just pay attention to the little abbreviation. There's a number of different abbreviations we can use for price elasticity of demand. So this one that I'm using on the screen is acceptable. If there are any different ones in your textbook, just pay attention to it. And then notice that each of the abbreviations are different for the different types of elasticity. So when we are with price elasticity of demand, we have to use EP or ED. So where are we? We can be equal to naught. EP is equal to naught, which tells us that the demand for this product is perfectly inelastic. We could be infinity, which tells us it's perfectly elastic. We could be equal to 1, which is unit elasticity. We could be greater than 1, which is elastic, and we could be less than 1, which is inelastic. Now, taking the information from our previous answers, we know that the college education was greater than 1, therefore it was elastic, and the Tina's pies were less than 1, it was inelastic. Please note that I am ignoring the negative. I'm not reading it as a negative number. I'm simply reading the number, but it was an inverse relationship of the demand curve. That's what your minus shows you, all right. That's as far as we go for part 1. Part 2 will fill you in a little bit more on your interpretation. See you shortly.